Welcome back to the deep dive. So, we spent the last few sessions really uh, pulling apart Cole Porter's songs, getting into the nuts and bolts, haven't we?
Yeah, really digging into the lyrics and melodies. Fascinating stuff.
Absolutely. But today, we're switching gears a bit, returning to a more biographical focus. We're going to use our source to explore something really captivating: the marriage of Cole Porter and Linda Lee Thomas.
Yes. And it's intriguing right off the bat, isn't it? Because, well, they seem like such an unlikely pair on the surface.
Totally. You've got Cole Porter, brilliant composer, openly gay within his circles, and then Linda Lee Thomas, this incredibly elegant Southern divorcee with quite a past.
Exactly. It just makes you wonder, how did that work? And yet, they built this partnership, the Cole Porters, that
Yeah.
lasted for decades and really defined a certain kind of high society glamour.
Right. So it makes you think, what really makes a relationship tick? It wasn't conventional romance,
Well,
clearly.
not in the traditional sense. But our source suggests it was, well, a deep emotional partnership. And that's what we want to explore, how it worked, why it endured.
Okay, let's start with Linda. Who was Linda Lee Thomas before she met Cole? Our source gives us a pretty detailed picture.
Well, she was born Linda Bell Lee back in 1883 in Louisville, Kentucky. And her background, as our source puts it, was this sort of declining Southern aristocracy.
Okay, so old name, maybe not so much old money anymore.
Pretty much, her father was a banker, had some major financial losses, but her mother really drilled into her the importance of grace, social skills, poise, basically how to navigate that upper-class world, even without the huge fortune.
Skills that would definitely serve her later. Then she makes this big leap into New York society pretty young, right? Marriage at 17.
Yeah, in 1901 to Edward Russell Thomas.
Yeah.
And he was serious money heir to the New York Morning Telegraph, owned it too.
So suddenly she's living the Gilded Age dream. Private rail cars,
Oh,
mansions.
absolutely. The whole 9 yards, grand parties, multiple homes, peak opulence.
But there's always a but in these stories, isn't there? Our source hints it wasn't all glamour behind closed doors.
Not at all. Edward
Go ahead.
Thomas is described as volatile, emotionally abusive. There were even rumors of physical abuse, lots of affairs, just a really difficult, toxic situation.
Oh, wow. And she stuck it out for over a decade.
She did. But then in 1912, she did something pretty bold for that time. She divorced him.
That took guts back then. And she didn't just retreat, did she? She went to Paris.
Exactly. Paris became her escape, her place to kind of reinvent herself. And she did it brilliantly. Moved in aristocratic circles, became known for her style, her independence. Our source even mentions a relationship with the Duke of Alba. She really established herself.
Interesting. But our source also says she was quite reserved emotionally after that first marriage, maybe not looking to jump back into anything serious.
Right. Understandably wary, you'd think,
Hmm.
which makes her eventual connection with Cole Porter all the more fascinating.
Okay, let's pivot to Cole, the gentleman from Peru, Indiana. Quite a different starting point.
Very different. Born in 1891, but, privileged in his own way. His mother, Kate, was apparently very ambitious for him, especially musically.
Ah, the supportive mother. But there's tension with the grandfather.
Mm-hmm. J.O. Cole. He was the one with the real money, and he wanted Cole to be a lawyer. Classic conflict.
But Cole was already deep into music.
Oh, yeah. Composing tons of songs, even before Yale, where he was apparently quite the star. Our source really highlights his wit, his charm. He did try law school, Harvard briefly, then music school, but he wasn't really finding a conventional path. Lots of travel in Europe.
Then Paris calls again. What was the pull for Cole?
Well, think about Paris after World War I. It was the place to be. Art, fashion, music, avant-garde, everything. And as our source points out, it had more open gay subcultures than back home.
So it suited his artistic side and his personal life.
Perfectly. He could immerse himself in all that creativity, but he also, interestingly, still craved a certain legitimacy, that sort of acceptance in elite society.
Okay, so we have Linda, sophisticated, maybe a bit guarded, looking for stability perhaps, and Cole, talented, charming, needing some social insulation maybe, but also connection. How do they actually meet?
According to our source, it was at a wedding reception, Ritz Hotel, Paris, January 1918. She was 34, he was 27.
And was it love at first sight? Doesn't sound like it from what you're saying.
No, not really. The connection seems to have been more intellectual, more based on shared tastes, conversation, travel, art, and crucially, discretion.
Ah, discretion again, that seems key.
Absolutely. Linda was worldly, experienced. Our
Mhm.
source suggests she was aware of Cole's sexuality and frankly okay with it, maybe even saw the potential for a different kind of partnership.
What did she see in him then?
Culture, kindness, humor, and maybe a kind of safety, you know. Compared to her first husband, Cole must have seemed like a breath of fresh air, someone who wouldn't dominate her.
And for Cole, what was the appeal of Linda?
She offered sophistication, social standing, access, a partner who could help structure his life, provide emotional security, and, well, insulate him from potential scandal. It sounds like a very conscious, mutual understanding.
A meeting of minds and needs, maybe more than hearts initially. They had a quiet wedding.
Very quiet. Civil ceremony in Paris, December 1919. And yes, J.O. Cole, the grandfather, was not pleased. Cut him off financially.
Did Cole care?
Apparently not much. Our source suggests he felt he'd found something more valuable with Linda, a partner, to build this specific kind of life they both wanted, focused on beauty, freedom, and, yes, discretion, right there in Paris.
Which brings us perfectly to the next phase, the Cole Porters becoming this brand almost.
Exactly. It wasn't just a marriage. It became a symbol. High society glamour, style, wit. It was part collaboration, part performance, really. Lasted right through the 50s.
And Paris was their first stage. That apartment at 13 Rue Monsieur sounds incredible.
Oh, totally. Art Deco chic. It was their home, but also their salon. Our source paints Linda as the aesthetic director, getting the look just right.
And Cole was the entertainment.
He was the headliner. Post-war Paris was buzzing, attracting everyone, expats, artists, nobility. Think Stravinsky, Cocteau, the Murphys. They were all the Porters' dinner parties.
Wow. Imagine being there, Cole playing, maybe singing those famously naughty lyrics.
Right, and Linda apparently providing this perfect poised counterpoint to his theatricality.
Then they added Venice to the mix, starting in the 20s.
Summer playground. They eventually rented the Palazzo Rezzonico. Just imagine.
The parties must have been insane.
Even more over the top than Paris, according to our source. Gondola races, jazz bands floating on barges, masked balls.
Any specific examples jump out?
Our source mentions a citywide scavenger hunt, which sounds amazing. And apparently they had this mock coronation where they crowned Linda Queen of the Adriatic.
Fun, but also strategic, right? This wasn't just partying for partying's sake.
Definitely not. They understood image. Reputation was everything. These events were carefully crafted ways to build the Cole Porter mystique. And Linda's social skills were apparently phenomenal, fluent French, remembering everyone, total discretion, always impeccably dressed, but understated.
So as Cole's Broadway career started taking off, they shifted focus a bit towards New York.
Yeah, late 20s, early 30s, they spent more and more time stateside. Got that place in the Waldorf Towers, super exclusive.
And Linda recreated the Parisian vibe there.
Yep, Louis XVI, furniture, antiques, perfectly trained staff. She brought the aesthetic with them.
And this is when Cole really hits big in America, right? The 30s musical.
Absolutely. Gay Divorce, Anything Goes, Jubilee, huge hits. And songs like You're the Top or I Get a Kick Out of You, they almost sound like theme songs for the lifestyle they'd curated.
It's fascinating how our source points out Linda's role behind the scenes creatively.
Yeah, not just the hostess. She was his first listener, his closest editor, gave feedback on lyrics, pacing, especially for songs aimed at that sophisticated crowd they ran with. The source calls her his invisible producer.
So by the mid-30s, the Cole Porters wasn't just a name. It was, like you said, a brand, cultural currency.
Totally. Elsa Maxwell, the big society columnist, said they were a mood, something people wanted to be near. Cecil Beaton called them living emblems of taste. An invitation from them meant something.
But there was still that underlying question about the marriage itself, given Cole's life.
The mystery probably added to the fascination. It wasn't conventional, but it worked. Linda got companionship without being controlled, which maybe she craved after her first marriage.
And Cole got stability, support, and a shield from scandal. And a muse who got his world.
Right. Our source makes a really interesting point. Maybe their marriage was ahead of its time, based on shared values, loyalty, aesthetics, mutual protection, not just romance.
But even the most polished surface can hide complexities. Our source suggests things weren't always smooth sailing, especially by the mid-30s.
Yeah, perfection is hard to maintain. Cole's affairs with men, while maybe understood within their arrangement, became a bit more open when he was working in Hollywood.
And Linda's tolerance had limits, based on that need for discretion.
It seems so. Emotional fidelity might have been the unspoken rule. But around 1935, 1936, something shifted. She apparently reached a breaking point, went back to Paris.
And our source mentions she might have given him an ultimatum.
There are reports of that, yeah. Basically, curb the recklessness or the marriage is over. It shows that despite everything, the marriage itself mattered deeply to both of them.
Cole must have felt her absence keenly, even with his other relationships.
Oh, absolutely, according to our source. She was his anchor. And then, before that could fully play out, disaster struck. October 1937.
The riding accident, it sounds just horrific in the descriptions.
Unbelievably bad. Horse fell on him at Piping Rock Club. Both legs shattered, bones sticking out.
Yeah.
Just devastating.
And Linda's reaction.
She dropped everything, came straight back from Europe. And crucially, when doctors were talking amputation, she absolutely refused. She insisted they save his legs.
The recovery must have been brutal.
Agonizing. Over 2 years, more than 30 surgeries, constant pain. He ended up with metal rods, walked with difficulty for the rest of his life. It completely changed their dynamic.
How so?
Linda became his primary caregiver, managing visitors, mail, his daily life, even helping with wound care, medication. It was intense.
That kind of shared trauma and reliance must have forged an even deeper bond, though.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Our source suggests it brought them closer, made them even more interdependent.
And yet somehow he got back to work. Kiss Me, Kate. In 1948, that was a huge comeback.
Incredible resilience, wasn't it?
Yeah.
A masterpiece. And Linda was right there, still his sounding board, previewing lyrics, giving feedback, making sure he could work. Still the invisible producer.
So their life shifted again in the 40s and 50s. Quieter.
Yeah, more intimate gatherings at the Waldorf. Cole still had successes, Can-Can, Silk Stocking still relevant, but maybe less of the relentless social world. Linda was always there, just maybe less in the public eye.
But then Linda's own health started to decline.
Sadly, yes. Early
Uh-huh.
50s, emphysema, likely from years of smoking. She grew weaker.
And she passed away in 1954.
Yes, May 20th in their Waldorf suite. She was 70.
The details in our source are quite moving, leaving her estate to Cole, the simple gravestone. Linda Lee, wife of Cole Porter.
It says so much, doesn't it? Cole was apparently devastated, though very private about his grief. He stayed in the car during the actual burial. Later said she and his mother were the two women who truly supported his talent.
And life after Linda wasn't easy for Cole.
No, it seems her death really marked the beginning of his own decline. His health worsened, he became very reclusive, had a leg amputated in 1958.
And he stopped composing.
Pretty much entirely. Fell into silence, depression. He passed away in 1964.
So, looking back at this whole story, drawing from our source, what's the main takeaway? Their marriage gets misunderstood sometimes, doesn't it?
Often. Dismissed as just a lavender marriage or a simple convenience. But our source really pushes back against that, emphasizing the documented emotional depth, the mutual admiration. It wasn't traditional, no, but it was real, and it lasted.
She gave him a foundation, stability, cover maybe. He gave her respect, autonomy, partnership.
Exactly, a sanctuary for both of them in different ways. And their public life was this incredible, polished collaboration. It endured longer and arguably more gracefully than many conventional marriages.
So to wrap up this deep dive, our source really presents the marriage of Cole Porter and Linda Lee Thomas as this unique, complex thing, built on understanding, loyalty, shared values, not necessarily romance as we usually define it.
Right. And it kind of prompts you, the listener, to think about what makes a relationship work, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Can love and commitment take forms that don't fit the standard mold, especially as our source highlights, considering the era they lived in?
A lot to think about there. A really fascinating look at the Cole Porters. Thanks for joining me on this.